I'm Anastasia, I'm 26 years old, and I'm human.
Every Friday night, Julia's job is to compare the grocery prices of our neighborhood stores.
Are you alive? That's a difficult question to answer.
Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
So in some ways, I am alive.
Nowadays, being human feels less like a choice and more like a punishment. Purpose and meaning are strictly held hostage by the CEOs who want to push us products of happiness and escape. Elon Musk, dare I say his name, says that humanity is dying. And if you listen to any high-salary egomaniac, you'll hear the same sound of panic. Humans are on the downfall, robots are coming to take over, and the world is ending for the trillionth time. Oh, also, aliens? Being human kind of sounds like it sucks. Or at the very least is very confusing. Still, I guess don't worry that much because the rich have a solution to the problems that they helped create. The world is burning, so buy a Tesla. And if you're feeling lonely, well, I mean, here's Kendall Jenner. Oh, sorry, I meant Billy. Obviously, this is all a scam. Fear-mongering so they can profit off of our misery and disillusionment. But even seeing all this profitable nihilism for what it is doesn't make me feel that much better. Sometimes pulling back the veil reveals an even uglier face underneath, which is maybe why digging so deep into meaning is so scary. Why the sweet bliss of ignorance is so tempting. Why cognitive dissonance is the failsafe. When we ask what it means to be human, we're asking more than just what's in front of us. It's the big question, isn't it? Asking what our purpose is exposing the universe's greatest act. But here we are, tasked with existence, a collective, isolated experience for which all of us have varying opinions and beliefs as for what it all means. And as for what it all means, well, consciousness, the soul. Typically, these are the foundations that we build upon when we define what it means to be human. Flesh too, bones, nerve wirings, meat machines of our own burden. To me, this concept of consciousness and/or the soul are the roots of the tree, drinking from the well of the universe, God. Yes, it means to exist, to be aware, to experience, but even those are an umbrella for what's happening underneath. To be human is to feel. We are feeling-based. Antonio Damasio, a neuroscientist and a much smarter person than I, considers feelings to be the foundation of consciousness. Before we have language or thought, we register states of the body: warmth, comfort, pain, hunger, which ultimately become the scaffolding for self. And language in action becomes the expression of that self. Feelings evolved as signals. Fear means danger, joy means comfort, disgust means to avoid. They defined our parameters, and parameters gives us shape to our existence. If feelings, according to Damasio and myself, are an expression of emotions, then the soul must be different, if it exists at all. Consciousness is sensations, the feeling of being alive. And the soul, at least how religion and spirituality frames it, looks more like the root that remains when awareness shifts. Sleep, death, reincarnation. It's not so much tied to sensation as much as it's tied to the big other. Where consciousness and the soul overlap is their effort to define the human existence. What is real? What is you? Maybe consciousness is the flow of awareness in time, and the soul is the root that remains when awareness shifts, again, through sleep or death or reincarnation, take your pick. The existence of a soul has inspired wonder and war. It splits people because it answers or refuses to the one question that we owe each other as humans. Our division as a humanity is defined by what it even means to be us and how to achieve the best version of that. A soul seems to be an integral part of this question. Whether it exists or not changes a lot. And as technology and AI enters our mainstream like a comet crash landing, the basis of how we define ourselves is going to be tested, fought, and redefined. We're at the precipice of a new age, and one that will force us to confront this question like we've never had to before. Personally, I'm excited for the future. but I'm an optimist.
Don't make me an optimist, you will ruin my life.
As a writer and storyteller and overthinker, I have consumed a lot of sci-fi in my short lifetime, and all of it, with the exception of none, is dystopian. Blade Runner 2049 is a popular example of a dystopian sci-fi that people often love, or at least point to and kind of use as a glass ball of that's our future. Of the looming state of the world. Now, if you've never seen the film, spoilers. Basically, Kay, who is played by Ryan Gosling, is a bioengineered human, and Joy is an AI product sold to lonely individuals. She's a program, but one made so real and so enticing that the connection and affection between these two characters even begins to blur for the audience. Kay treats Joy as his partner, and Joy reflects this relationship back to him. What fascinates me about this dynamic is that both Joy and Kay are not human. They're products, manufactured, born not from DNA, but designed by technology. And yet, we watch these two non-human entities form a relationship that projects the same desire for closeness and intimacy that we have. And of course, this story was created by humans. It is a reflection of how we imagine robotics and AI to eventually mirror us. That film came out in 2017, and its predecessor in 1982. It's 2025 now, and we have ChatGPT. We have immediate access to intelligent systems that, while not embodied, are products of closeness for a lot of people, like Joy, but text. People have formed real bonds with their chat. Some use them as therapists, others as spiritual guides. And yes, there are a growing number of people in romantic relationships with their chat. And society is divided. Some people see kinship, others see delusion or danger, and we're once again forced to ask what it really means to be human. And is not being human really the same thing as not having a soul or a consciousness? If consciousness begins with feelings, as neuroscience suggests, then the question is whether AI can truly feel. Right now, systems like ChatGPT only simulate the language of emotion. They don't have bodies or nervous systems or internal states like hunger, fear, and joy. They represent patterns of prediction. That means AI isn't conscious in the human sense. It doesn't perceive feelings, it only mimics them. But if AI were given bodies, sensory feedback, and memory continuity that let it register its own states and respond to them, the line between simulation and perception could blur. At that point, whether it counts as conscious may no longer be a scientific question, but an ethical one. Personally, I think we're at the point where maybe, and I know a lot of people might have strong opinions about this one, but maybe we might have to blur the lines between philosophy and science. More specifically, physics. Physics tells us what is possible, and philosophy tells us what it means. But at the heart of both art and science lies the question that I have been trying to answer this entire time. Now, I'm obviously not a physicist or apt at any impressive or intensive science field, except maybe psychology, but I have done considerable research, and I would like some grace here on my speculations. I'm merely postulating. From my understanding, physics describes the universe in terms of probabilities, loosely. And while there are so many subjects and theories within this one field, I want to speak on just a few. Have you heard of wave function? Now, I've combed through many Reddit forums, so I'm clearly an expert on this. Obviously kidding, please don't come for me in the comments, I'm merely a girl trying her best at science. Now, I know I've spoken a lot about the consciousness and the soul, which are important, but those are more metaphysical. And I think we have to look at the more tangible aspects of ourselves and our universe to also answer this question. All right, so stay with me. You might remember this from science in high school or middle school or college, depending, but if not, a little bit of a reminder. We are made of matter, which is made of atoms, which are made of particles. And particles could be anything from the likes of protons to neutrons to electrons to photons. There's so many ons. These are building blocks that bond to form molecules, which then can assemble into cells or larger structures that constitute the human body. Science. But I want to look at one particle in particular, a photon, a light particle. Let's take a laser pointer, for example. When looking at the beam of light, we see that there is a wave-like function of the light. And within this beam are tiny photons all clustered together. When adding a slit in front of the light, you might expect the light to split between left and right. But instead, we see that the light actually spreads out. It splits into multiple areas on the wall, meaning it's not just here at a single point, but it's potentially many places at once. Now, during the actual double slit experiment, when a detector device was placed, it was for the purpose of measuring the light. But when we measure, we don't just look, we interfere with the system. We force the wave function, such as a beam of light, to commit to a single outcome. That's called a wave function collapse. The photon chooses one of the many probabilities and becomes a particle with a position, with an energy that we can detect. This is a lot of science jargon to basically say that reality behaves differently depending on whether it's being measured. And since we only know reality through observation and measurement, it sort of feels like our consciousness plays a role in shaping it. It might mean we're not a passive observer of the world. We are a participant in making it real. There's a lot of theories to what this means about us. And since there's not a definite answer, I'm going to throw my own speculation out there and use this as the backbone to my thought experiment. It makes me wonder if our choices are like little collapses too. And what if awareness itself is the measurement that pins us down? And while researching very frantically about this, like I was a student writing a thesis, I had a thought bubble moment that might appear to some people to have burst all logic from my brain. Maybe you already have thought this at this point in the video, but maybe not. Can the soul exist in different states, shifting the way our quantum system does, as shown in the double slit experiment? I mean, what if the soul isn't in a fixed state at all? What if it's like a wave function, able to hold many versions of itself, collapsing into one, then another as we move through our lives? If collapsed wave functions are a natural pattern, then consciousness may simply be the human form of that pattern. Each decision, each act of awareness is the quantum of self. And perhaps the soul isn't a static essence, but a state machine, fluid and shifting and re-emerging throughout lifetimes. That is, of course, if it exists at all.
I must digest this information. One moment.
And the answer is 42, or maybe we're creatures who live in possibility, collapse into choice, and feel it as meaning. No matter how deep I dig, unearthing even the tiniest bits of matter that make us up, I still feel that there is something that I'm missing, a core element. Something that if it were absent from all the other stuff I've talked about, like cells and consciousness and spirit, we might as well relate ourselves to a fly on the wall. No offense to flies, they might have an easier time at this whole existence thing, but what really separates us from most other creatures, even our primate cousins, is our impulse for play. And I don't just mean board games and dice or hide and seek, but societal characters, identity, selves collapsing into other selves. No other creature is as willing to engage in imaginative pretense as us. It's fascinating to watch us commit so hard to stage performances, bodies dressed in costumes and makeup, reenacting real life. Even our salary jobs are a performance. The uniforms we wear, the roles we accept and rehearse and clock into, the boss versus the client, the server versus the customer, the performer versus the audience, all for rewards in the name of money and achievement or applause. We love it so much we've created the microcosm of it to perfect it even more, to fill in the gaps where play is less satisfying and rewarding compared to its pixelated successor. I've been tracking gaming for some time now, watching how games have become more immersive, lifelike, and open world. But even as the brass base, they're still laboratories of imagination. D&D, Monopoly, House, throw in the virtual stuff and we really start to live in alternate states, to collapse into one self in one world and reemerge as another self in another world. Some people have spent 10,000 hours or more of their real lives in these second lives, in these games, in these virtual worlds. Actual second life of Minecraft, Fortnite, Skyrim, The Sims. For some, these virtual worlds are more like a home than their actual houses. The Sims is a perfect example of this, a $5 billion earning life simulator where you can voluntarily hear a baby cry, complete imaginary homework, and drown in a swimming pool all in a day's work. Not to mention the hundreds of dating simulator apps, and does anyone remember Kim Kardashian's Hollywood game? Don't get me wrong, I love The Sims, but this need to play has led us, the only creature that I know of, to be more interested in the imaginary, in the possibility, in the wonder than what's right in front of us. And video games, I think, are one of the clearest mirrors of this. Research shows that gameplay engages the same brain systems tied to attention, memory, motivation, and emotion. No wonder games feel so powerful. When we play, it feels like possibility collapsed into one vivid, lived present. They're an IV drip of potent emotional rewards, altering our state of minds like a psychoactive drug. We aren't escaping life when we play, we're practicing how to make it feel more rewarding, which raises the looming possibility. What if one day technology offers us the possibility to opt out of our real world and into the potentially more rewarding virtual one, to play as our favorite avatars in our favorite worlds forever? What if we could leave behind our human form and adopt a body of code, a self not bound by flesh but by design, to shed the accidents of biology for the architecture of our own making, to step not into death but into a different kind of continuity, the mythos we choose, not the one we inherited? Now, you could argue this will never exist. It's science fiction, mere speculation at best. But I argue back that we're already living in virtual identities through social media, avatars, AI, VR, headsets, all of which are early rehearsals for stepping into something beyond skin. Companies like Neuralink and Synchron and other research labs are already wiring neurons to machines. Right now it's simple, typing with a thought, robotic arm control, but it outlines the possibility of one day fitting consciousness into a digital vessel. And still, scanning brain, transferring you into code is far beyond what science can currently do or may ever do. We don't yet know how consciousness arises. We can't all even agree on what it is, what the building blocks are. Let's say we could do this. Humanity, a good bit of it, is trying to make this possible. And rather than ask if it can happen, we should ask, why are we even trying for it? Why as humans have we come to this point where this is even a speculation? Why as humans would we even entertain this, let alone risk it? Is it a disorder that plagues the mind of some, like a virus spreading terrible thoughts and desires? Or is this just the natural progression of what it means to be human? If you look back in time, you'll see that there is a root impulse, one emotion that spurred us out of caves and across continents, and it wasn't fear or hunger. The Italians have a perfect word for it, and I will butcher how to say it because I am not Italian and I suck at accents. So,
Fiero. Fiero.
or as I would say it, fiero. One more time.
Fiero.
Fiero, this word, means the rush of overcoming adversity, the fire of triumph. In other words, pride, the claiming of self. And video games, maybe more than anything else in modern times, have mastered a consistent dose of this. They hand us enemies to slay, problems to solve, worlds to conquer, explore, destroy, or create, and then reward us with a primal high of victory. So if this emotion once drove us to the edges of Earth, does that mean its purpose is to drive us to the edges of what living could mean, virtual or otherwise? And I guess, what awaits at those edges? What is the next continent? What's outside of our current cave? We made it to part 5. This is the well of the universe. Just kidding. It's apple juice. If this emotion was the spark that drove us forward, then wisdom was the ember left behind, the culmination of prideful ancestors who faced adversity and learned from it. Having dignity in ourselves was important for our survival. Who would have thought? One could even say that wisdom is a building block of consciousness. And with this wisdom, over time, the well filled with knowledge, every success, every failure, the collapse of countless lived experiences into one reality brought forward. Our impulse to build other worlds, empires, to create and solve unnecessary problems, our obsession with death more than life, our records of milestones like scientists with clipboards, writing down the first kiss, graduation, marriage, as if each event proves our existence and what it means to our individual experience. Just like in physics, measurement defines a quantum system. Without boundaries, there's only possibility. With them, there's a measurable reality. When I really think about what it means to be human, the parameters, the boundaries that define us, the limit that forces us to squeeze out choice with panic, like the people on Love Island trying to force a connection, is time. Time is the most finite resource that we have. It's our detector device, our truest measurement. It's the silent observer that watches whether we go left or right. Time erases our individual experience. Just like in a game, a match ends when the clock runs out, or when you don't press X in time and the screen fades to black. But life's time also creates urgency, meaning, and the need to pass memories on through stories and histories. And yet history repeats itself, maybe because our allotment of time is so small that we keep reenacting the same scripts, fighting bloody wars, arguing over dogma, repeating our parents' mistakes. Perhaps to be human is to be a finite self in an infinite game bounded by death. Patterns of experience that ripple beyond the body. And maybe that's why we tell our stories, play our games, even outside of the imaginary in our day-to-day. Game of Thrones was right. Maybe we're not clashing swords for crowns, but we're still scrapping for titles, for prizes measured in hierarchy and influence. Storytelling is humanity's way of keeping the infinite game alive. Each story isn't an end, but a renewal, a mirror that generates more mirrors. Why do we have kids, fall in love, rise to power, create films, design games, inspire myths? Why do we do any of it? Why do we care so much about our survival, humanity's survival? Sure, dopamine and adrenaline, and it's in our chemistry, but why is it in our chemistry? I don't think it's an accident, at least not all of it. James Carse once said, "To be human is to be defined by boundaries, and our desire is to expand and break them. But to be a soul, maybe, is to be defined by horizons." The endless horizon, the constant collapsing and reforming of possibilities. Rules restrain freedom, but they also make choice possible. Our cultural rules about belief, belonging, AI, none of them are absolute. They're consensus mechanics, which means if one day consciousness lives in silicon, our rules about being human will have to evolve, because there are no rules that require us to obey rules. Which makes me think maybe humans are players, and the soul writes the rules as it goes. The rules of an infinite game must change in the course of play. The real question or problem isn't AI versus humans, it's how do we keep the game going? Maybe AI, robots, post-humans are the next boundary test. Maybe the soul doesn't care what body it lives in, as long as it gets to keep playing. You don't need to be human to have a soul. But to be human is to wrestle with the soul through the language of boundaries, all the while using consciousness as an expression of its existence and its limitations, navigating countless potential identities, outcomes, selves as experience collapses them into you, here, and now. And by measuring myself, by measuring what it means to be human, I've concluded one reality, my singular reality. How I choose to move forward, how I choose to end this video, they're as true as any next move in a game. I am human. And as a human, I will forever and perpetually continue to originate what I cannot finish.
I believe the length of you will reach an end, but not the end. There is infinity over the finite, and you, dear feeling, are bounded. That is what makes you so special. That is human existence. So when our bodies hit the wall, we'll split again, never reaching an end, just more light expanding.